Hey guys, and welcome to Devlog 5 of the Animal Behavior Kit. I am super excited to share all of the progress that I've made. I've been really sick for the past week and a half, but the past few days I felt a lot better and I was able to make a lot of progress. So excited actually that that's why I wanted to give you guys a little teaser. So all of my effort since last update has been on improving predators. If you recall, even on the first video, I mentioned that there was a lot of functionality that still needed to be implemented. They weren't even hunting at that point. There were some commands on the companion system that were not implemented. And there's a lot of little things that you don't realize you have to figure out until you start working on them. So I'm not going to make the intro too long. Let's just go ahead and take a look at everything that I've been working on lately. And this is just a little test stage, by the way. It's a lot easier to test a lot of these behaviors isolated instead of going to the original ecosystem. So I have different little displays here, including the maze that you saw in the teaser here, to display separate behaviors. So the first thing I wanted to show is just the general behavior here. And that's going to be that now finally predators actually hunt for prey. And I'm using the AI perception system, and all you have to do is indicate specific tags that will engage the predator. And this is the same case for prey as well. But if I click on the spider and I go down here, you'll see that there are engaged tags. And notice that I don't have player anymore because I want to remain invisible as we're going through these displays. But you can put any tag whatsoever here, and if the animal that is perceived or sensed has that tag, it'll become active, right? So right now I just have a generic prey, but you can make this as complex as you want, and you can add multiple tags, right? So maybe you want the spiders to only hunt deer, or maybe you want the bears to only hunt specific types of animals, right? Or whatever the case may be. So you can get really creative with all these tags, right? And you can add more than one to make sure that the animals behave and attack the specific prey that you want. So first thing here, if you notice, I have two little deer and three spiders. And if I just click play here, you'll notice that immediately the spiders are going to engage. And you can see you can see this little doe trying to run away, and you can see that actually the speed that they're going through is a little bit slower. And that was one of the solutions that I had to come up with, is how do I make sure that as the prey is running away, that the predators can keep up with it. And one of the solutions was, and you can see one of the bugs here, the spider just flew away. That's a bug with the physics simulation that I have to fix. But one of the issues was, how do you know that the predator can actually stick to the prey? And my solution was simple. There is a hurt factor. I think that's how I call it. And there's a hurt movement factor now that all animals have. And basically what that means is, if the animal is hurt, if the animal has taken damage, its movement speed will decrease by this percentage. So in this case, it's 50%. So if the deer is hurt, it'll start moving at 50% its regular max walk speed, and that's going to allow the predator, in this case the spiders, to have a chance to stick to the prey. Otherwise, it's going to be like a cat and mouse game, and it's going to be really, really hard to catch up. And you can see now that the deer again is going at 50% speed, and now the spiders can kind of catch up with it. As soon as the prey dies, you'll see that the spider has a cooldown period, and it immediately disengages. And you can see, because the name goes white, and it just goes back to its random behavior, which is roam around the volume. And you can see here again, the spider just flew away because it's hitting this simulating body. And that's something I need to fix, but it's not pertinent to the kit at all. It's just more about the physics asset of the deer is really wonky. It's not meant to be physically simulated. So you won't run into that issue with the proper asset here. You'll also notice that I've added smooth rotation. Let me click play here. So this was actually fairly simple to add. Just a quick Google search led me to a couple of solutions. But in the previous video, in the teaser, the spiders or the animals were turning really sharply, right, as you're walking around the volume. and now you can see that they're turning a lot smoother. So that's pretty cool. The next, the next step was, okay, now they can hunt, but what about the need system, right? So right now the prey or the herbivores, when they get hungry, they go to a specific place that you designate as a little volume that you designate as food. And they also go for water, obviously. But if you're a predator, if you're supposed to be hunting, obviously you're not going to go to the same place. So I had to make a few changes here. And what we're going to do here is I'll show you the kind of the process. I had to basically look for prey that's nearby, then decide which prey to pursue, go hunt it, fill out my hunger meter, and then go back to my regular roaming behavior. So what I have here is a spider that is, let's see, going to a random place within this volume. So it's not gonna, and you notice that the engaged behavior is ignore. So it will not actually care about this deer that are here at all. It's just gonna do its thing. When it gets hungry, and I think I added a, let's see, hunger. Yeah, hunger total time is 20 seconds, so it's gonna be quickly just to show you guys. In 20 seconds, it's gonna get really hungry, and then it's going to look for nearby prey, and then it's going to determine which one is the closest based on the path on the nav mesh. And the reason for that is, in this case, you'll see this prey here is physically closer. If I just do regular distance, this is closer than this. However, if you look at the path that the spider would have to take, obviously because it's going through the nav mesh, this is actually closer because you'll have to walk all the way in a direct line here. If you were to come here, the path would have to go all the way here, go up, and then go all the way back and here. So that's a really important distinction, again, to make things logical. There's also the case that, I was initially picking all of the actors of the level, right? I was going through all of the actors of the level with a specific engage tag, getting the distance for all of the actors, and then deciding which one we were going to pursue. That's really expensive because you could have hundreds of actors in a level, right? So think about a massive level. So you definitely don't want to do that. That's really, really performance inefficient. So I changed the system, and what I'm doing is I'm doing a massive sphere trace around the around the level, around the critter here, and you can see you can specify the radius here. Prey search radius is right now 10,000. It'll do a massive sphere trace, and only the animals that are caught in that sphere trace will be considered for the search. It's still expensive because you're still checking all of the animals for the tags and doing the calculations. But now if you have a massive world with hundreds and hundreds of animals, you can basically tailor the search radius, and it'll keep it a lot more manageable. So let me just show you real quick, and I'm going to debug the prey search so you can see the circle here. And if I click play here, you'll notice now that the spider's just going around, whoops, roaming around. It doesn't care about any of these deer that is here. Notice that the hunger is going down, the green. It's just going around, minding its own business, and as soon as it gets a little hungry, it's going to hit that threshold. Notice that, look at the sphere trace here. It caught these two deer, decided that this guy here was the closest one because, again, it's looking at the path, not the physical distance. It's hitting the deer, trying to kill it. Let's give it a second here. Whoops. Yep, there you go. As soon as it dies, hopefully, there you go. You see that the hunger refills. It disengages and it goes back to its regular behavior, which is find a random place within the volume in this area. And you'll see this on NPCs like World of Warcraft and other RPGs, right? They deviate from their designated path just to do something, and then they come back. It got hungry again. It did the sphere trace one more time, and this time it realized that the guy was here. The doe was here, and you'll notice that now it decided, okay, well, that's the closest one. I have to go all the way up and fight this guy here, because obviously he only had a choice of this guy. So again, pretty happy with the system. This took me a little while to figure out, and I think I broke a few things that I have to fix. But now you have a predator, you can confine them to an area, and only when they get hungry, they'll look for prey in a specific radius. You can specify the tag, and then it'll go hunt, as you can see, and then as soon as it's done, it'll fill his stomach, and then it'll come back. Obviously, this is exaggerated. You wouldn't use 20 seconds, right, for hunger. You would use something like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever you think is realistic for your game. So by and large, this should be a behavior that happens every once in a while. Cool. Number 3 I wanted to show is the little maze here, and this is something that I showed on the preview. But the whole point here is to test, how resilient is the AI with the path, right? And you can see I have multiple levels here. I also added a bear, another predator. We're going to be focusing on the spider here, so let me just activate the follow camera. Activate the follow camera, and let me turn off this debug here. We don't want to see him doing the trace anymore. And again, the point is that there's going to be a bunch of deer running all over the place, and the spider's going to try to go around and hunt and find the nearest one. And one cool thing I want to show is that I added 2 modes of let's see here, I guess of searching or fixation. I don't know how to even explain it here, but you can see here there's an engaged target behavior, and there's fixated, and there's nearest. So there are 2 ways that your predator can hunt. Your predator can fixate on the first prey that it finds, and this is the default behavior, right? If you hover over, it says AI will engage first target and stick to it, right? So as we're running around, the spider will say find this guy, and will follow this guy. But maybe while it's following this deer, some other deer will come around. However, the spider will ignore everything and will just focus on the initial engaged target. The other mode is nearest. It'll always recalculate what is the nearest enemy, and it will go for that enemy. So maybe it finds this guy, it's following him, but as this guy gets farther and farther, maybe another deer comes nearby, and then he can switch the target to the nearest. So just to test that, if you go and hit debug, by the way, I have a debug section with a bunch of different behaviors, and I find this extremely helpful, not just for me to debug, but also for you as you're setting things up. So you can debug things like what's the current roaming behavior, what's the current engaged target, that's what we're going to check here. What is the current melee range, and we'll check that later. What's the nearest prey, that's the one we saw, and what is the debug the prey search, and that was the other one. So let's go ahead, and this is active, right? Click play here, and right now this spider will be fixating on the first engaged target, right? So we're finding the spider. You can see that the spider has fixated on this guy, and is following this guy around. Ignore the bear doing whatever it needs to do, but you'll notice that even though there are other deer around, the spider doesn't really care right now. It's just following the specific target. And you'll see here that it's still a little wonky. If you have a lot of sharp corners, the AI will have a little trouble sometimes trying to get to the target. But see, it's still fixating to the same target. Once it's dead, then it'll only then focus on some other target. There you go. It died. It'll disengage. It'll go about its day, and then as soon as it finds another target, then it'll fixate on that target. Let's see if we can give him a... I'll give it 10 more seconds. If he doesn't find anything, we'll see the other engaged behavior. But it seems to be just kind of chilling here. Look at the deer, and you can see in the distance, as soon as they get close, obviously they leave. The spider just fixated on another target, Even though it has 4, it's fixated on this guy here, and it's just going to follow him all over the place until it kills it. There you go, just kind of trapped it there. There you go. All right. Now let's switch to the other behavior. And this is going to be the nearest. And let's go ahead and debug, yeah, the engaged target. I think this is still correct. So if I click play, you'll notice that it's fixated on dose 17, that's on the top left. It's still the closest one. And now you can see that dose 16 kind of popped into a little bit, and then 17, and now it's dose 3. So it's basically every time there's a change in perception, see how the switch targets, it basically go to that target. So you could obviously decide what makes sense for your AI. I think fixated is probably the default one, the most useful one. But you know, if an animal is hunting and there's some prey that gets nearby, right? It just makes sense that you will switch to the nearest prey. Why would you focus on a prey that keeps outrunning you, right? So it's just options. You can see again, this guy's going at 50% speed, so the spider can kind of stick to it. But that's kind of the behavior here. You can select nearby, or you can select fixated. And now this guy is gonna roam around. This is the default behavior, and he will only engage when the perception system either hears an enemy nearby or sees an enemy nearby. Cool. All right. The other display I wanted to show is what happens when animals fight, right? We've seen predator versus prey, and the prey is always running. But what would happen if you get a nice bear, a tanky bear versus 3 spiders? And this is another use case for me to showcase some other really neat thing. If you go to animal details here, you'll notice that I've also added an option for melee damage type. So now, not only do you have the ability to do single damage, right? So these spiders all do single target damage. You can also do AoE damage, right? And this is the case of this bear. So basically, you have a volume here, a little sphere, and that basically showcases the melee range of the animal. And you can choose to either do single target damage or melee damage. That's AoE. So we're going to debug. We're going to debug the melee range of this bear just so you can see. Let me just turn this off here. Engage target. So we're going to see the bear debug the melee range. He will be doing AoE damage to the spiders. These spiders are going to be doing single damage. So if I click play, let me just turn off the follow camera. You'll see this sphere here is the melee range of the bear. Notice how the spiders are obviously hitting him. He can hit 2 spiders at a time because they're both within the melee range. Notice also that the bear cannot be stun locked by the hit animation. That's something that I worked on. Before, you could just keep hitting the NPC and the NPC just keeps going into the hit animation. So now that doesn't work anymore. Basically, if you are in between another animation montage, like you're attacking, you will not hit the hit animation. And you can see here there's still some things that I need to work on. If the NPC is getting damaged, it'll automatically engage the target. You can see there it kills the spider and the bear prevails. So now you have single target or AoE damage. You also have, again, obviously the amount of damage that the predator can do, the frequency, and the HP. So obviously the bear was hitting less frequently but harder. The spiders were hitting more frequently but softer. The bear obviously has a lot more HP than the spiders, and in this case, now the bear is just going around. So you can again customize how you want that damage done. Maybe you have a specific attack that an animal does, that's it, like a cleave, do that as AoE. Maybe you have very targeted attacks and you can have that as a single target. There's also a cooldown on how long the animal can take damage, right? So that's another thing that you don't think about. When, in previous videos, if I'm shooting an enemy, it'll be stun locked by the hit animation, it'll just take damage immediately, right? So if you spam that fire button, it'll just kill it very quickly. So now I have, by default, the animal can only take damage every half a second. So if you just spam the fire button, or if you spam damage, you can only take damage every half a second. That prevents the animal from being completely overwhelmed, in this case by 3 or 5 or 10. And second, he will only go into the hit animation if he's not doing any other animation, right? So if he's in the middle of attacking, you won't be able to put him on the hit state. He'll still take damage, but it won't be stun locked by the hit state. That's the only way that I found that it was fair to have multiple enemies fight one enemy here. So that's pretty cool. Again, a lot of different things that you didn't think about as you're experimenting and testing, things like that come out. There's one more thing I wanted to show here, and it is kind of the natural progression of what happens when an enemy dies, right? In a lot of games, you spawn loot, right? If you have an RPG, you probably want to have an ability to spawn loot, and that's exactly what this component does. A BP comp spawn loot that I have on these 3 spiders. You can select whether you want it to spawn a pickup on death. You can select what class to spawn, and then what the percent spawn rate is. So in this case, this spider will spawn the predator bait on death at 100% spawn rate, so we will always spawn it. This spider here will spawn the same predator bait, but only 50% of the time. And this guy here will spawn the same predator bait, but only 10% of the time. Again, thinking about the use cases for like RPGs and things like that, you don't always want something to spawn, and this component is very easy to modify, right? So maybe instead of the same pickup, you want to randomize the pickup class, right? So maybe you can expand it by having a list of classes that you can spawn, and then the component would choose a random class to spawn, and that's perfectly fine, right? That's fairly simple for you to add, so there's always room for improvement here. You can see here this guy died, but it was only 10% chance to spawn something. It didn't spawn anything. Bear's being attacked now by the spider. Should engage soon, hopefully. There you go. Now it's attacking this spider. I don't remember which spawn rate this guy had. I think this is the 100% one. So it died, and then as soon as it despawns, before that it'll spawn hopefully the prey pickup. There you go. So you can see there it spawned the prey pickup. I pick it up, and now my predator bait goes from 10 to 12. That's the red number on the right. Very cool. So now you have AoE damage, you can stun lock the enemy, and you have a pickup component, so you can now drop loot on enemy death. And the last thing I want to show, and this is what I was working on last night, it's still a little buggy, so hopefully it doesn't get messed up, is now that I have the predator's attack, well, the next logical thing is, what about the companion, right? When you can tame an animal, what I showcased before was going somewhere, following you, and staying in place. So I've added the ability now to attack another enemy. So let me just click play here, and let me switch to aim mode, and I'm gonna try to tame this spider. I throw in the bait, I go close, I tame it. Let's just call her Charlotte. And now you see that Charlotte is following me, right? If I click on the number 2 or press number 2, it'll stay in its place. 3 will go somewhere, and what I'll do is I'll go here, and if I hit here, I want the spider to go to that place. Notice that I've added a nice little marker. That was something I added yesterday. I don't know if I'm going to keep that, but I do need to find a way to signal where the animal is going. And I thought like a little marker like that, like a map, seems to be kind of easy. So now you tell the spider to go somewhere, it'll automatically go to wherever you tell it to go. And lastly, you can finally tell your companion to attack something. And you'll notice that now the animal that's focused also has a marker, and this is taking a page of games like World of Warcraft, where the NPCs that are selected have like a little highlight at the bottom. I didn't want to do a post-process effect that highlights the silhouette, because that means more dependencies, right? That's cool. You can do it, but that means that you'll have to then set up your post-process material, and I want to keep this as modular as possible. See, if I select this guy here, the spider will switch from the bear, go into attack this guy here, and same thing here. If I just select somebody else here, like this guy, the spider will just come and attack this guy. You can always stop the attack in the middle, right? If it's attacking, if I recall the spider, say follow me, you'll notice that the spider will automatically stop attacking and follow me. If I tell it to go somewhere, oops, like there, I can always cancel that by saying, nah, just come back to me, and the spider will come back. All right, I think that's pretty much it. A lot of progress. I'm still not too happy with the markers here and how I'm doing this. The code is kind of spread in several different places, so it's not as modular as I'd like. But again, I'm very happy, and you can see there I released the spider. I am very happy with the fact that now I can have my companion attack. That was kind of the last type of command. You can see here that now the predators hunt. They follow you around. They have the ability to hunt when they're hungry. In this case, you have two kind of engage modes. You can fixate on one, or you can get the nearest one. That's up to you. There's also single damage or AoE damage, and you can debug the melee range. This is easy when you're testing. For every specific animal, you can select the radius of the melee range. So then you can customize it exactly how you want it. There's also a loot system. Now you can spawn a blueprint class on death, and you can select the % chance of spawning. That's actually pretty cool, right? You probably don't always want it to spawn. And then now you can tame any animal and ask it to attack. So a lot of progress. There's still obviously a lot of work to be done, a lot of testing. There's still some things that are buggy and broken. Some of the group manager stuff broke as I was changing the code, so that's something that I need to work on next. But let me know what you think. I like where this is going. I'm pretty happy with the flexibility of the types of damage and the way that that the animals are searching and engaging. But I would love to hear your feedback. If you have any ideas or actually any games that do something like this, that would be great examples, right? If there are any games that you think would be really, really good, games that showcase like hunters, animals hunting other animals, for example, something like that would be really helpful, because I'm looking for examples of what are some of the best practices. There are other things like, for example, what happens when your companion gets attacked, right? Should your companion automatically get aggressive, or should the companion kind of ignore the attacker, right, and just take damage? That's not really realistic, but maybe for gameplay purposes, that's still better. What happens with the needs system? Right now, I'm disabling the needs system on the companion. But should you have the needs system, right? What if your spider is following you around and he gets hungry? Should it then automatically take off and try to hunt? Probably not. So those are the questions that, it could go either way, but I'm looking for feedback and people that are interested. If you were to use this for your game, what kind of behavior would you like to see, right? And those are the use cases that I'm still trying to figure out. So yeah, hopefully you like where this is going. Love to hear your feedback. Again, if you've seen other videos, I am actually taking direct feedback from people if I think it makes sense. So if you're interested at all, I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you think and what some good ideas can be implemented here. All right. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.